Tonight, Oscar slapper Will Smith reunites with a man who should be slapped, Martin Lawrence, in an inexplicable third sequel to a moderate hit that's 30 years old. What you gonna do? The bad boys are back. By public demand? Well, I don't know about that. I mean, there was a second sequel in 2020 which is called Bad Boys for Life. You'd think, well, surely that should be the title of the fourth movie. But maybe they didn't have that much faith in the third movie. They should have done. It was the highest grossing film of 2020. That's right, the highest grossing film of 2020. But of course, that's because 2 weeks after it came out, there was the global COVID pandemic, the end of the world. That's what it takes for a Martin Lawrence film to be the #1 movie in the world in any given year. The collapse of fucking civilization.
Welcome to hell, bitch!
But the people at Sony looked at the grosses of Bad Boys for Life and thought, well, let's do it again. So here they are. And the returning directors, whose names I can't remember, made a movie in the interim. They made Batgirl, which cost $94 million and was so bad it was written off as a tax liability. It wasn't even released. You'll never see it.
You insidious insect.
Our disguised and now Titian-haired beauty makes a smashing entrance.
Holy apparition! No, Boy Wonder, I'm Batgirl. You are no longer alone, Caped Crusaders.
It's important to say before we get too far into this movie that obviously Will Smith is a reduced figure today. In Bad Boys: Ride or Die, he's subdued, distant. Not his old sprightly self, the not so fresh prince, if you will. We all know what's on his mind. And let me just reassure you, Will Smith, I know you're a huge fan of this show. I'm not going to refer to it. That's not what this is about. Okay? What you did has got nothing to do with what you're doing or what you will do. I want to make that absolutely clear. Like the third film, it's a Michael Bay tribute act. It's graceless, witless, and pointless. But it doesn't have the crudity or the lecherousness that Bay surely would have brought to the table. There's no playing with a dead woman's tits in this movie.
Why would you? That's just not smart, man. You tell Teresa I can't.
Just a couple of tits. Once again, you have Lawrence and Smith plying their creaky shtick.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
In order to facilitate the banter, what a sort of screwball comedy would look like if it was fueled by testosterone, protein shakes and old age. You've got a subplot in which Lawrence has a near-death experience, and that convinces him that he's both invulnerable and has a form of extrasensory perception. He sees his dead boss, and he has a sort of a vision quest, and he predicts the third act of the movie. Indeed, in fact, the entire arc for Smith's character in the film And you might think that's because he's seen a lot of the same movies as screenwriters have from the 80s and 90s, and he's managed to cobble together the plot from those. And if you did think that, you'd be correct. This magical realist turn is quite a thing for a Bad Boys movie, but it doesn't result in some literary quality dialogue and character scenes. In fact, what it does result in is Martin Lawrence sort of talking nonsensical bullshit and Will Smith rolling his eyes. And indeed, the audience too gets to roll their eyes. The story is an old one about the two cops being set up. Their dead boss from the third movie reappears here as a sort of spectral version of himself. Is implicated in a money laundering operation involving drug cartels. Smith and Lawrence, naturally as the man's defenders, determined to clear his name, are thus implicated, and they have to go on the run. They don't go alone, because of course, as we know, Smith and Lawrence can't do a lot of physical movement these days, so Smith's son from the third movie is broken out of prison, so he can do all the heavy lifting in terms of the kinetic action sequences. Also, you may recall Reggie, or you may not recall Reggie from the previous movies, because let's face it, you've hardly seen them. He's the guy that married Martin Lawrence's daughter, and in this movie it's established that he's a military guy, and he's gone off to war in Yemen and come home, so he's a trained military soldier, so he can handle an action sequence on his own. And this is necessary because Smith and Lawrence are extremely old, far too old for this shit. You might remember in the third movie, Smith had to be literally wheeled into one action sequence in order to do the shooting. Not like the old days. The only time you see these two characters run in this movie is in long shot, and it's clearly not them. Don't worry, there's youth here. There's testosteronic youth to deliver the movement that's so desperately required. But of course you can't have them all the time, so what do? What you gonna do where if Smith and Lawrence have to be in a sequence and they can't physically move? Well, you move the camera instead. That's what the directors do in this movie. They keep the thing highly kinetic. They use drones, they use GoPros, they shift from third person to first person, like in a shoot 'em up game. Anything to distract from the fact that the creaky old leads can barely shift on their feet. And it works. Highly stylized, highly enjoyable action. Extremely over the top. And the movie's full of lovely little nice visual flourishes to keep our faltering attention. It clocks in at under 2 hours. It moves at a lick. And that's about it. I mean, what else do you want from a Bad Boys sequel, for God's sake? Martin Lawrence playing with a dead woman's tits? There shouldn't be any more Bad Boys movies, of course. They've had their day. The first movie came out in 1994, but that, of course, isn't going to stop them if this one's a hit. Surely they'll be back after all. Lethal Weapon 5 is in the pipeline, isn't it? Directed by Mel Gibson. And whatever Will Smith has done, at least he's not an anti-Semite.
You ever made love to a man? No. You want to?
But those of you who find faces that are a bit wide and a bit loose jarring, trigger warning going into Bad Boys: Ride or Die. Martin Lawrence's face features in close-up here, and it's rather horrific. More so than a woman being shot by a drug dealer, or a man being eaten by an albino crocodile. No, all of that actually happens in this film. Spoilers. Now, it's Martin Lawrence's face you've got to worry about. If you can't handle it, don't go. Bad Boys, Ride or Die is certified 15 for the damage to Will Smith's career, Martin Lawrence's face, and recycled plot elements. It's probably playing in a cinema near you right now, but surely not for very long. Good night.
That was a greatest night in the history of television. Okay.